This is my favorite audience. The miscounted, mistreated, misdiagnosed, and misunderstood. The ones they spoke about behind sealed courtroom doors were certain you'd never rise. They never dreamed you'd be the one reading the tiny print, to fight back with precision or to turn the whole system on its head. And they certainly didn't expect you to win like this. Let's be clear. You did not just win. You detonated. You didn't play fairly. You played wisely. When the decision was announced, no one said anything unbelievable. Instead, they whispered, "Is this even legal?" The fact is that you weaponized silence. You allowed them to chuckle as you discreetly loaded the evidence. You let them dance as you remembered each lie. You allowed them to circle your name on a lawsuit while you etched theirs into history. They fabricated documents, but you created fate. They recruited attorneys, but you depended on God's patience. They arrived with tricks, traps, and witnesses. You arrived with that nuclear quiet, which weighed more than any argument. Silence whispered, "I do not need to talk. The results will scream for me." And when the judge's gavel finally fell, it was not justice that resonated throughout the chamber. Panic ensued, because you did not simply win. You humiliated them in the language they believed you could never learn. They're now calling in the feds, not because you breached the law, but because you demonstrated how much of it was always in your favor. They can't understand how you achieved it. You were expected to fold, weep, go bankrupt, or, at best, settle for crumbs. Instead, you strolled in with a blank look and walked out with everything: the money, the title, the inheritance, and, most importantly, their shame. Publicly signed, sealed, and televised for everyone to see. There are wins, and then there are. This isn't even one of those legal triumphs that causes lawyers to drop their pens in mid-sentence or forces news outlets to alter their headlines overnight. Even your adversaries will shake their heads and exclaim, "That was insane." You did not merely defeat them. You become the warning label. The example engraved into future instances is one they will never forget. Because from now on, whenever someone attempts to act dirty, your name will reverberate through their heads like a hurricane. And if anybody doubts that, just recall what occurred the last time someone tested you. Yeah, let's just say they don't want to become like them. You turned the whole bloodline upside down. You broke a family heritage founded on nothing but falsehoods. In the process, you humiliated every cousin who participated in the covert WhatsApp group discussions. Even the ancestors, who had been watching silently, are now rising up and applauding. But here's the bit that nearly seems criminal. You were not intended to wake up. You weren't meant to develop to see through the illusions, to comprehend the system, let alone mold it into a weapon. And yet, look at yourself now, walking out of court in an immaculate suit, face expressionless as if nothing had occurred. While behind you, the whole structure is still smoldering from the fire you started with the truth. They believed they had you cornered with affidavit, gaslighting, techniques, and fabricated witnesses. But you didn't just push back. You made the walls dissolve. They attempted to remove your name from your own lineage. But you took their script, rewrote it, and signed the conclusion with your own fingerprint. The whole room has gone frigid. The air is thick, and even the judge looks at the judgment in surprise, murmuring, "Did we just see a crime turned into a family case?" You didn't need a backup. You didn't need sympathy. You needed one clean shot. And when the moment arose, you seized it so well that they said you hacked the courthouse itself. They labeled you theatrical, emotional, and reactive. But the fact is that you were calculating. Every response they ridiculed was part of their goal. And now see how they're behaving amid turmoil. Calling attorneys at midnight and erasing messages. They can't afford to constantly updating their resumes like fleeing fugitives. You did not just claim an inheritance. You turned your whole fortune into an accusation. They whispered, "They will never make it through this." You responded with a whisper. I bet they laughed. You studied. They testified. You waited. And when your moment came, you didn't just talk. You brought hell itself to the courtroom. The scariest thing, you didn't have to yell. You did not gloat. You didn't even flinch since you knew exactly how this narrative would finish. They panicked and called the feds. However, they neglected to comprehend that you are now the feds. And every time their phone rings, they shudder, unsure if it's a lawyer, a lender, a judge, or karma itself. wearing a badge. When you strike with precision, cleanness, cold blood, and calculation, you don't merely win a case. You disrupt their whole neurological system. They can't sleep. They cannot eat. They don't even communicate in family group chats anymore. Instead, they murmur in private DMS, erasing text like digital smoke signals that may rescue them. But it is too late. They assumed it was about money. They assumed you were battling for the inheritance. But no, you were battling for memory, truth, and every falsehood that they attempted to weave into the fabric of your legacy. And in full daylight, in front of the whole courtroom, you took it out piece by piece until nothing remained except their humiliation. They once called you insane. They're now the ones Googling in the morning. Can you be jailed for lying in probate court? You handed them something worse than a sentence. You gave them a reputation. Because losing the illusion hurts much more than losing money. They wanted to be regarded as saints. You've turned them into suspects. They wanted to wear the crown of heirs. You transformed them into punchlines and memes. They anticipated to see you handcuffed. They now look at their own wrists every now and again. They feel the phantom heat of shackles that have not yet snapped shut. And let me tell you about folks who regard courtrooms like casinos. They bet on your sorrow, expecting you to gently fold and vanish. However, you did not fold. You went all in. And as the cards struck the table, the whole pot burst in their laps. Even the lawyers who previously scoffed are now looking at your case file, muttering, "What kind of genius lunatic built this masterpiece?" You set up the data with precision, like dominoes in perfect order. And then, with a single flash of reality, you saw them fall in real time. You were not the victim in this game. You were the trap. The razor is disguised beneath the grin. The joker in a deck that they assumed had rules. They believed they were teaching you a lesson. But instead, you gave them a criminal record laced with shame. They intended to break you. However, they are now the ones who are broken, and money cannot cure them. Haunted by public humiliation, private anguish, familial shame, and the perpetual echo of your name etched into case transcripts. You did not come to play their game. You come to demolish it. You came to demonstrate the system. What happens when an underestimated intellect stops running, turns around, and starts creating new rules and fire? Now, whenever they hear the term inheritance, they twitch. Every time the gavel cracks, they shiver, recalling how your quiet was louder than their screaming. Every time they check the mailbox, their stomach lowers, hoping there isn't another subpoena with your name attached. They tried to shrink you to keep you little, but you exposed a horrifying reality. Once the quiet ones begin to learn, they stop losing. And now they're terrified. Not because you yelled, not because you raged, but because you were cool, composed, precise, and correct. You had receipts. You stepped in with poise. You walked out with power. And when you departed, everyone in the courtroom muttered the same thing. Who the heck allowed them to cook like that? Because what you did was abnormal. It wasn't even lawful under their corrupt standards. However, by your standards, it was legendary. You did not just win. You rewrote the game. They're now fumbling through their dusty rulebooks, attempting to make sense of what transpired as you enjoy the rewards of victory. You are no longer merely a winner. You are a myth. In such courtrooms, your name is not uttered. It is now spoken as if it were a curse or an incantation. They are frightened that shouting it too loudly may unleash the same storm that almost destroyed them. Because what you offered was not true justice. It was dramatic vengeance, carried out with surgical precision. Now, every lawyer in the city has a cautionary story that ends with the same message. And that is why you should never underestimate someone who just wants peace. You did not bring peace. You gave equilibrium to them, and you did it with the stillness of a wrecking ball. You are no longer a person. You've become a case study, a story. The same reason dodgy cousins engage attorneys before even considering a will. You demonstrated precisely what happens when they underestimate. Finally, say bet. Not loud, not petty, and not ostentatious. Just chilly, accurate, inevitable. You left no fingerprints, but you did leave scars. You did not breach the law. You shattered their whole perception of what is possible when intellect finally comes into action. Now they are advising their youngsters not to be greedy. They're revising their wills, praying to their attorneys, deleting old emails, and agonizing about choices made 6 years before. You have altered the environment itself. You transformed probate court into a crime scene with air conditioning. Every time they step inside that building, a shiver passes through them. Not because you are present, but because your legacy lives on like smoke after a fire. You made the system blink first. You smashed it open like a rib cage and made it shout your triumph song. And the greatest part? You didn't even flex. You simply disappeared. Case closed. The record is set. Silence. Deafening. And now, every time they check the news, review their bank accounts, or gaze up at the sky, they worry whether you're going to fall again. Another lawsuit in your pocket, like a Molotov cocktail ready to be ignited. You scarred them without using a weapon, raising your voice, or allowing fury to overcome you. The wound you left was not physical. It was etched with evidence, with the indisputable truth that the silent ones are always the most deadly living. You didn't just reverse their story. You buried it and replaced it with your own origin narrative. A narrative that asserts a universal rule: play foolish games. And one day, someone will study the entire legal code in order to legally break you while smiling. They ridiculed you. They planned against you. They pictured you creeping onto the court on your knees. But you did not come broken. You come armed in fury, with God to your left and rationality to your right. And every ounce of anguish they attempted to inflict on you became pure leverage. You became their greatest nightmare, a calm, smart, and unwavering version of yourself. The sort of energy that doesn't respectfully knock on the door, but rather kicks it open and sues for emotional harm on the way in. Now you are more than just a narrative. You are folklore, a flaw in their lineage, a spiritual bill collector that no prayer can remove. You were previously known as the black sheep, the outcast. But now you are the Grim Reaper, dressed in a smart suit and carrying legal paperwork instead of a sign. That's why this was more than simply a victory. It was a warning and a proclamation to everyone who has ever undervalued you. I was silent, but not weak. I was patient, not passive. And now I am not only living. I am the reason you are paranoid. Because this is the truth. You don't even need to talk anymore. Your quiet communicates in its own language. Your quiet poses its own menace. Your absence creates its own presence. You could come into a room and say nothing, and people who had betrayed you would begin admitting to things you had no idea about. That's what happens when you push too hard to win. You don't just defeat them. You imprint a memory in their neurological system. Their hands now tremble as they sign documents. Their voices break as they push out the words. We're family because they know deep down that every lie they ever perpetrated is now recorded in a courtroom file stamped with your name, highlighted, embossed, and forever. You've become the ghost that haunts every group chat, the phantom at every dinner table, and the shadow that transforms family gatherings into crime scenes disguised as catering. You are the curse. They can't stop the storm. They are unable to outrun. They speak about forgiveness as if it were a choice. But they know better since they lost more than simply money. It wasn't just about believability. They lost the privilege to say your name. They lost access. They have lost you. And now your quiet has become hallowed. A sacred warning was engraved on their consciousness. Every defection became proof. Every untruth became leverage. And the streets, oh the streets. Remember, people are still whispering about your narrative, as if it were folklore or an urban legend inscribed in the cracks of concrete. Yeah, brother. They attempted to play him. I wrote him out of the will. I tried to gaslight him. I thought they had him cornered. Now, half of the families have broken up, while the other half is in therapy attempting to comprehend what occurred. You moved from being just one relative. They discarded the one they expected would fold quietly, becoming a case study in divine vengeance. Professors might spend whole classes explaining how you turned pain into precedent. Judges may point to your calm as the reason chaos has a new meaning, but the fact is that they deserve every bit of what they're experiencing right now. Every restless night, every forced grin at supper, every uncomfortable quiet at breakfast. You gave them opportunities. There are so many opportunities to choose decency and togetherness to set things right. But they gambled against you. When you collect on such bets, the money does not earn interest. It is dread. Now the paranoia pervades their everyday routines. When anything goes wrong, Your shadow is the first thing people notice. The employment rejection came without explanation. Was that you? That unexpected audit knocking on their door? Did you design it? That bogus subpoena they received in the mail? Was it your handiwork? Just to let them know you're everywhere. They do not know. And it is the part that makes them tremble. Because once you become a myth, you don't need to act anymore. Your reputation does the haunting for you. They should have chosen peace. They should have chosen family. They should have chosen forgiveness. But instead, they chose war. And when they opened the door, you didn't just go through. You scorched the hinges, so it could never shut again. You did not just win. You immortalized the struggle. You transformed the battlefield into a museum, curating their failures, framing their autographs, and preserving court transcripts as exhibits. Nobody can erase. Children are now growing up hearing the tale as if it were a bedtime admonition. Do not lie in court, where you will wind up like Uncle So-and-so. Alternatively, don't underestimate the quiet ones. They will make fun of your whole lineage. You didn't only want retribution. You transformed it. You boosted it. You transformed devastation into beauty and retribution into an art form. And you achieved it with one deadly gift: an intellect honed by betrayal and a spirit that refused to submit under their feet. They assumed they were playing chess. They assumed they were tugging cords. But you were no longer on the board. You were the fire that turned the board to ash. You are now free. Free not just from them, but also from the weaker version of yourself who previously permitted them to sleep soundly. You aren't battling anymore. You are floating above it all, untouchable. And they're stuck in an unending cycle of what-ifs. What if you came back? What if you enter one more time? What happens if you unearth another lie? They dug deep. What if you haven't completed yet? Those questions corrupt people from the inside out, undermining their confidence, sleep, and calm. And you will not respond. You will let the stillness to operate like poison. Slow and persistent interest compounded on a debt they should never have incurred. Because, at this point, vengeance is not the goal. Revenge was child's play. Courtrooms, paperwork, exposing falsehoods. Those were only warm-up movements, which you performed with surgical precision and fire in your veins. With that smile they can still see in their dreams. What you're experiencing now extends beyond retribution. This is ascension. This is transcendence. You're no longer crawling through the dirt with mortals vying for morsels of justice. You are no longer in the battle. You became the fight. You embraced it, owned it, and terminated it so brutally, so totally that even the universe murmured. Allow them to pass. They've endured enough. Now it's the rest of the world's time to feel it. And this is the reality. You are no longer a person to them. You are a presence, a phantasm, and a living verdict. You are the cause. Before filing any document, fresh lawyers double and triple verify it. You are the reason courtroom interns turn pale when they come across your name in an old case file. It's as if they discovered a ghost in the archives. You are not one of the chapters they examine. You like doctrines. You aren't a file. You are the warning label that is placed to the exterior of the system. You made the courthouse quake. You made the system blink first. And now, every time they hear your name spoken, every time they walk by that building, every time they touch a pen to sign another paper, they recall the day the courthouse fell in your absence. And the greatest part? You didn't even flex. You did not yell. You did not gloat. You smiled. And that grin alone was enough to transform your foes into cautionary tales as you walked away. Free, untouchable, unforgettable, unstoppable. You are the reason why betrayal no longer seems casual. Before your backstab, it was simply another family sport. Cheap remarks behind closed doors, whispered falsehoods at dinner tables, and counterfeit signatures concealed in dusty envelopes. But you broke the illusion. You transformed treachery into a warning sign. You made betrayal seem radioactive. It is dangerous to even try, because there is now live evidence that certain individuals can utilize your harshness, misdeeds, and efforts to erase them as a superpower. You, more than anybody else, performed perfectly. You did more than simply withstand what they hurled at you. You transformed every hit into movement, every insult into fuel, and every scar into a crown. And the bit that really scares them, this is not what you did. It's something you didn't do. You did not gloat. You did not promote them online for cheap likes. You did not yell into megaphones. I told you so. Number you disappeared into success. You vanished into quiet. And silence is more damaging than any insult. Because quiet is heaviest. Silence suffocates. Silence makes their imagination work overtime, painting scenarios of your achievements with hues much more vibrant than reality. They don't get to see your demise. They do not understand the satisfaction of your defeat. They can't even trace your movements anymore. All they know and can hold to is this unshakable fact. You left with everything. They're left with nothing. In the cruelest twist, the person they insulted, questioned, and disregarded ended up taking it all. They no longer remember your name. Is it fame? It survives. There is fear. You have become their personal Armageddon. A quiet storm that shakes their bones every time they remember how mistaken they were about you. You are the unhealed wound, the scar that throbs every time they attempt to pretend things have returned to normal. What's even more upsetting to them? You have become an inspiration. Strangers, people who don't know your whole tale, they feel something when they hear about you. They get a shiver when your silence is referenced. They lean forward when your tale is spoken because you've gone beyond being a human. You've become a symbol, a pattern, a warning engraved in the brain of anybody who underestimates the wrong soul in the sickest portion. Your tale will never be revealed fully. It cannot be. It's too complex, strange, and wonderful. What you did was not entirely human. It was something else completely. It was divine punishment. Justice is dressed in flesh and wears a Joker's smile. Karma given in real time, holding a pen and smiling. You mastered the truth. Most folks cannot even face it. Sometimes the most godlike deed isn't shouting, striking, or seeking praise. Sometimes the most wonderful thing you can do is walk away from it all and say nothing. That is transcendence. That is ascension. You've progressed beyond courtrooms, battlefields, and the bloodline dramas that previously sought to confine you. You don't sit at their table anymore. You sit above it all. Untouchable, unreadable, undeniable. They cannot reach you. They cannot comprehend you. They cannot predict you. They can only watch from a distance, flinching every time your name resonates through their memories. Because you did not simply become successful. You became sacrosanct. Not as holy as mercy. Not sacred, like tender forgiveness. Sacred like fire. Sacred as thunder. Sacred evidence. Proof of the underappreciated one. An outcast. The quiet genius. A scapegoat. The family. Black sheep. The one ridiculed behind closed doors was always the god of the room. They believed they were removing you from a will, but you showed yourself as something larger. Not an heir, but a strong will. They arrived with falsified papers. You arrived with destiny. They arrived with falsehoods. You came with the law. They sought to eliminate your existence. However, in the process, they permanently taint their own legacy. You did not just win. You rewrote existence. You changed the blueprint for potential. You demonstrated that quiet is louder than screaming. Patience is sharper than knives. That dignity is more deadly than violence. And you are no longer playing roles. You go beyond villain, hero, and retribution. You are something uncommon, something immortal. You've entered the world of legend. Legends do not explain. Legends do not return. Legends do not return to argue or defend. Legend. Stand. Unreachable. Unshakable. Unapologetic. They persevere. They haunt. They inspire. That is who you are today. A gift sewn into memory. A fable etched into family lore. A shadow that bends systems and speaks across generations. Your quiet became scripture. Your win became a prophecy. You are not their demise. You embody their philosophy. And the doctrine is straightforward. Don't overlook the quiet one. You were the one who destroyed their whole lineage. Lies into ash, and you never looked back. You did not pause to rummage through the ruins. You did not stand atop the ruins for applause. You did not hoist a victory flag or demand to be recognized. No, you vanished. You disappeared so totally. It was as if the earth absorbed those Instagram images of you smiling on the courtroom steps. There were no champagne bottles hoisted high beneath the camera light. No celebratory interviews. Not even a boastful quote tweet. You didn't leave a single crumb of pleasure for them to feast on. You simply walked away. Quiet. surgical, and impenetrable. That is something only gods, ghosts, and monsters can do. And that's what really broke them. Because the decision was one thing, and your silence was another. It wasn't simply the wind that disturbed them. It was the restraint. Now people remember more than simply what you did. They torment themselves, wondering what you might have done if you'd gone farther, if you'd chosen cruelty over closure, if you'd opted to be brutal rather than compassionate. Because the reality is, you had the ability to drag their names through dirt till they perished. You have the proof, accuracy, and momentum to embarrass them on a worldwide stage. You might have gone viral, made headlines, and transformed their humiliation into a documentary seen by millions. You might have reduced their reputation to ashes on every television in the nation. But you didn't. And that decision, that silent refusal, is what scares them the most. Because it demonstrated that you were no longer interested in vengeance. You were acting on prophecies. They now speak about you in the same manner that people talk about unsolved murders or mutter about ghost tales when the lights go out. You are the mystery that remains in their lungs. You were the one who walked as quietly as air and then fled, leaving the whole home on fire behind you. They can't understand it, so they make excuses. They swear you had assistance. They swore there was no way. It was just you. They devise intricate plots to avoid the truth. They must have had a judge inside. Nobody is that good without a strong backup. There's no way they worked it out on their own. Because the alternative was to stand alone, to sit quietly, studying, learning, and absorbing before executing with such precision that it cleaved their legacy in half. That truth is too scary to confront. So they construct stories, conspiracies, and shadows to hide behind. But the truth does not bend. You win it alone. That makes you the most terrifying kind of person alive. Someone they attempted to destroy who knew everything quietly, said nothing, and then walked away as they fell into dust. Now your name is a curse. It doesn't just dwell in their tongues. It circulates in their bloodstream. It sends pulses via their neural system. It's the shudder that runs up their spine when they hear footsteps at night. When the phone suddenly rings, they have sweaty hands. It is a knot in their chest. Every time they see a sealed mail with their name on it. Your silence is free in their minds, and your absence speaks more than their presence ever could. They don't even discuss you freely anymore. They whisper. Their gazes change. They exchange tales like black market items, and your name is passed about like contraband. Worst of all, they've turned you into a warning to their kids. They give nighttime cautionary stories disguised as morality, but laced with terror. Be nice to others. You never know who is crafting a case in quiet. Do not overlook the silent ones. They will be the ones who rewrite the finale. You become the ghost of their family tree. The shadows reach across generations. The reason their children inherited paranoia rather than pride. You didn't just annihilate them. You cursed them. You become the everlasting whisper, the eerie presence during their meals, the unnoticed visitor at their reunions. You don't have to be there. The echo of what you accomplished is sufficient. Every chuckle from those meetings fractures beneath the weight of your memories. Every toast is sour because your name is sandwiched between two clinking glasses. Thank you, kind and everlasting Father, for always hearing my voice. I give this prayer to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provisions. I am thankful for your presence in my life and the richness you provide. If this video spoke to you, please subscribe to the channel and share it with others who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your trip and how you're getting ready for your own victorious homecoming. If you would want to help us out, please consider donating via Buy Me a Coffee. This allows us to consistently improve our content in order to provide you with the best possible experience. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description, and no gift is too modest. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity spreads God's message and gives people hope. Do not stop here. Watch our next video for amazing insights into the indications that indicate you are the chosen one. We've loved sharing this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for sticking with us until the finish. Keep shining brightly and face your fate with confidence. See you next time. The God Connection sends its blessings to all lovely individuals.